Welcome to the Veterans Cafe podcast, where we talk about issues surrounding veterans and soldiers, as well as current events in the world.
Sometimes we interview guests and organizations, but more than anything, we are here for you.
Welcome to another episode of the Veterans Cafe podcast. I'm Wes.
I'm Tracy.
And today we wanted to talk a little bit about where the Army is headed. Not just about what's coming in the future, but also what they may be getting rid of that's from the past.
This next topic, the first topic, I find very near and dear to my heart. I'm assigned to an airborne unit, and my husband's airborne qualified. So I find it fascinating because I see like all the discipline and I see like the tradition and I see the importance of why we should have soldiers that are airborne qualified. And then I also see the other side that a lot of people are talking about of late.
Yeah, because it's going to hit home for a lot of people.
Literally.
That are going to be that are seriously going to be upset and bent out of shape over this.
Because it's a huge tradition. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that upsets people.
That's sort of the argument, is that that's why it's still around. And of course, if you haven't picked up on it yet, we're talking about the idea of having airborne units even in the Army. And a study came out, a report came out, that's basically even just questioning the efficacy of the entire program from its conception, even all the way back to World War II, really talking about how necessary it was and really how successful it was back in that time, which I don't know. I guess it could be debatable whether if it was successful, but if looking specifically at something like World War II, it's kind of hard to say that it wasn't. But even though it was the drops were a kind of a disaster in terms of the operation, it still proved to be incredibly useful in terms of linking all these different checkpoints and waypoints that the beach forces were able to move up to. So, you know, whether it was useful in World War II or not is debatable, and I'm sure historians have probably been debating about it for quite some time. But talking about whether it's useful now is an entirely different topic, because I mean, look, the 82nd, they didn't even jump into Iraq. They haven't jumped in since Desert Storm. They haven't jumped anywhere. So how useful is it really? And
the debate, though I don't think that I agree with it, but the debate is, you know, how many times do 82nd Airborne soldiers jump, right? I'm lucky. I get to document them. They can jump several times within a week, several times within a month. It depends, right? So the question is, you know, why are we spending all this money and training, you know, for all these soldiers if we're not actually utilizing them in combat, right? Or any kind of situation, you know, even humanitarian wise, that will benefit us. But the question is, you know, not, in my opinion, not if they're obsolete. It's just the question is, can we afford to not have soldiers that know what they're doing? Because it's one of those things where I think you need to be proficient. I don't think that you can jump, you know, once or twice a year, every 2-3 years, and then feel like you're competent if it comes up in a situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of disagree, though. I mean, jumping, there's not really a whole lot to it. You know, they specifically design everything in an airborne unit for you to be a dirt dart just to get on the ground as quick as possible, you know, and then the question is, what do you do from there, you know? So,
but there are so many people who get hurt.
That's true. That's very true. And that's kind of part of the argument, is that they get hurt unnecessarily when we have other ways that we could more quickly and efficiently insert soldiers, you know, like,
aside from jumping. Yeah.
Right. Like all the, you know, of course, Vietnam, we moved to what they called air mobile, and then now we call it air assault. So essentially just using helicopters just to put soldiers in. And of course, the difference between airborne and this is that we can actually bring soldiers out if we need to. So it really does bring to question what the use of having an airborne unit is, where we can just, and it's not to say that it's not still useful doing airborne drops, you know, equipment, things like that are still, of course, incredibly useful. To be able to have a plane fly over a certain location and
like
drop equipment.
And all that.
Well, not sling loading, just doing air drops, like drops of pallets of MREs or, you know, even vehicles they can drop. You know, sling loading is more like the air assault thing. You're still the downside to using helicopters is that of course they're more vulnerable to whatever's happening on the ground, whereas these planes most likely aren't. Even though when we're talking about airborne, in terms of people, they're flying pretty low So they may still be vulnerable, but of course they move a lot quicker and they don't have to stop to let people out. So it's still, it doesn't seem like it's, I mean, we're obviously not using it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's the question. That's why everyone is.
Right. I think the start of these wars, you know, I think maybe the Rangers and I think maybe the 173rd from Italy, they were like the only two units that actually jumped in anywhere. And so if we're realizing that they're not useful in a tactical sense right now in this modern warfare age, it you know, it stands to reason that we probably shouldn't be paying for it anymore. You know? Yeah,
because that's the argument is just that it's high cost, right? Because if you're on jump status, you get paid a little bit more, which I think rightfully so, you should be. But that's the debate. The debate is that you get, you know, we're paying more for each soldier, right? You know, per month, you know, for them to be on jump status, right? And then we are in essence paying for them more in case they get injured, which unfortunately happens sometimes. So that's debate, you know, it's very high cost. So the question is like, is the risk worth the cost? Because, you know, it just hasn't been used recently. So I find it like a fascinating topic, and we could probably go on and on for it and on and on. But I'm also a huge supporter of tradition, and I feel like the tradition of it is important. I mean, you know, we were just talking, I don't know how it came up in conversation earlier, but we were just talking about how in dress uniforms, you know, you can wear like the jump boots, which I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I think it's so cool. You know, I just love that. And then the fact that I don't think it's, you know, it's so cool, which of course I think it is, but it's also like the history of it. I mean, you're like honoring people before you in a very visual way, I think. I don't know. I think it's
right. But important. From a strategic standpoint, that makes no sense, which is kind of what the article talks about. And I'll quote it directly. It says that DeVore, the author of the study, argues that airborne still exists today not because of successful operations, but rather institutionalization and military culture. Even from the start, airborne operations produce inconsistent results, and he said in recent decades, technology advances have all but removed them from the modern battlefield, both American conflicts and beyond. So even the Russians with their badass recruiting commercial, you know,
yeah,
their whole airborne...
I don't, it makes me wonder if maybe we're just going to streamline at some point. Like I have met soldiers from units that are not airborne qualified, but they've been to the school, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with just going to school. I mean, you know, schools are awesome, but it makes me wonder, like, should we have like all these slots for units of soldiers that are never going to jump? Like maybe we should just start to streamline there, right? I don't know. Does that make any sense? Instead of having just the slots open for everybody? I don't know. I feel like maybe there should just be like true airborne units. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I would be hesitant to say that, say, like the school and the training is you know, completely obsolete and outdated, because who really knows what can happen in the future? You know, whenever when we invaded Iraq, everyone thought that the new Apache longbow, all that, they thought that it was going to be the ultimate weapon. We probably weren't even going to need to put boots on the ground. You know, these Apaches were going to go in, light things up, and the war was going to be over. And these Apaches got lit the F up. I mean, it went completely south. So having this type of training and these type of skills still in units may prove to come in handy in a pretty dire situation, you know, where we find ourselves somewhere where we can't use helicopters, or maybe they're getting just tore to pieces, you know, and we need to find some other way to get troops in there without losing them, you know, getting shot down in helicopters. So it's not that it's completely useless, and we should, I don't think we should completely do away with it, especially the training, but it's something that should be probably in the background. You know, it's probably something that should be, you know, taught and learned. And I mean, honestly, they're so wrapped up in safety. Why couldn't this be something that's like a train the trainer kind of thing? You know, I know it sounds crazy for someone to go to airborne school and then come back and then teach, you know, members in their squad or whatever how to do airborne jumps, like back at the unit. But if we're not using it, then obviously we're using it to be prepared for the most dire circumstance. So I think that that's probably the way to go with it, and just do away with this airborne unit thing, but have everyone airborne prepared should we find ourselves in that situation, which if we did, holy God, that would be ugly.
It's interesting. I mean, most of my unit, there's a large percentage of my unit that are airborne qualified, right? And there are quite a few jump masters in my unit. And, safety is definitely like a high priority, I don't know. I mean, there's always like bar and there's always training in case, heaven forbid, anybody, gets injured in some way. It's like a huge focus on my unit. We're always looking for jumps. Everybody does it very safely and everybody, keeps track of like, what kind of shoot and things like that, just for proficiency. So I don't know. I mean, it just makes me wonder. I mean, I like I said, of course, I think the jump books are just so cool. I think honoring the tradition is important. I mean, I just think it is. I don't think it's something that's obsolete, but I do understand the cost of it. I mean, we're living in a time where everything is like under scrutiny for cost in the military, which I don't think should be, but that's the way it is. So I just feel like, I don't know. I think airborne's worth the cost.
I think you're just sucking up to our airborne listeners right now. That's what I think. Because you're from an airborne unit, you're just sucking up to them. And I have airborne people right now. I know you, listener. You're throwing your iPhone through the windshield. Like looking up my address or something right now.
You're so
How
silly.
dare you talk shit about my maroon beret?
You're so silly. I don't know. And then I'm not gonna lie. As a photographer, it's fun to document it. Just I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. We just wanted to talk about it because it's in the news, and I know is this a topic that can be passionate, right? Either way, whether you're for it, against it, if you think it's obsolete or not. So we just definitely want to mention it, and we definitely encourage you, to comment like on the podcast or on Facebook, even, or Twitter, what have you, what your thoughts are. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think we should talk about it.
Well, since we're talking about the future of the Army, and this is sort of something that seems to be possibly on its way out. It's definitely important to talk about what could be on its way in. Mm-hmm. And so we found a couple of stories that were pretty interesting. And so one of the things that we actually found was a story in USA Today, and they were talking about better body armor that's going to be coming out on a combat shirt in, it says 2019. But it's supposed to make things more comfortable, give us greater flexibility.
Lighter weight.
Right, lighter weight, all that. And I remember a while back they were testing out this armor, and it was like this dragon skin, scaly kind of stuff. So it was supposed to be
Sounds
so that
so sci-fi.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be like so you could like flex around. You could actually move. So you weren't just wearing these big solid plates.
Yeah.
You could actually like kind of flex your body and move around and everything. And anyways, they ditched it for whatever reason. And so every time I read about this new type of armor that's coming out and everything is going to be lighter and more flexible and things like that. My first thought is, there's something about having that big ass solid plate that I can't move behind.
Makes you feel safe.
It makes me feel like I'm actually standing behind a brick wall. Whereas if you put some cheap piece of plastic on me and tell me, don't worry, this will do better than that plate. I'm like, I don't know.
I know it's recently, we went to the 2-day TCCC class, right? With D-Day Response Group in Okeechobee. We mentioned it on another podcast. But anyway, they had a couple of plates that they, some organization that worked with them were like testing out. So, of course, it was like live fire. So they were like, hey, does anybody want to try these new plates? And it's funny you say that because I was like, oh, sure, why not? I picked it up and I was like, it feels like there was nothing there. I don't know. It didn't feel like, I don't know.
Look, I'm going to need this styrofoam to be at least a foot thicker. I mean,
it's interesting. But at the other, like the other side of like the coin, so to speak, right? It was really lightweight. So it did make me feel like if I needed to run or jump or whatever, I mean, I was documenting, so I wasn't doing that. But I felt like, if I had that on in a live fire situation, I could move more quickly, and more efficiently and quietly. And, so I think that's the whole point, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm just talking about like my first, right out of the gate. As soon as somebody tells me that, that's kind of, where my head goes. But what we're actually talking about has actually been tried. They've actually done trials with soldiers at 3 different installations. And they've done it with Marines and special operations units, a couple of different groups of people, and they've gotten 95% positive feedback. So who knows? It could actually be the future of what we start wearing, which, to be honest, is as much as I'm, sitting here talking shit about something new and lighter and all that. Man, it'd be nice to have something that was just more practical, something that
you can breathe in.
Right, exactly.
And
my first thought,
as a female, it's different when you're a female, as I'm sure you can imagine. As far as just like being pressed down with the plates and then not being able to breathe, it's challenging.
I'm sure, but I mean, it's still for all of us. It's
not pleasant.
I mean, I don't know. I wore that IOTV just over a year ago, all over the place, and it was 100 and whatever god awful degrees in Jalalabad, and my God, you just put that thing on. And within 2 minutes, you're just soaking wet underneath.
I know
your body just can't breathe.
You were so lean looking, though.
So what? I want comfort.
You look great.
I want to feel comfy.
I mean, you look great now, but you look great.
Yeah, well, I don't care about that. I'd rather just be comfortable. I'm not 19 anymore. I care about how I feel. I want to breathe.
You're so silly.
It's funny because when we invaded Iraq, I'll never forget, all these people thought that we had such advanced technology. They thought we had like X-ray glasses and all that kind of stuff. And one thing they also thought was they thought that our vest actually had like air conditioners in it, like to keep us cool.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
And I was like, dude, you have no fucking idea how wrong you are. I'm dying out here right now, man. And I can't believe they couldn't tell that I was like sitting there just like red.
And all red-faced and blotchy.
Drenched.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And stinky.
Yeah.
Well, the armor, I think is really cool, especially if they're able to perfect it and it's more flexible and lightweight, because that will just benefit any soldier out there, no matter what your mission is, right? But the other thing that I thought was fascinating, and we saw a couple of different like variations of the technology, was the bioskin. Oh my God, I didn't even realize that this was something that is even possible. Like scientifically speaking, like technology, I mean, it's crazy, and there's so many different like ways that this could benefit us. I mean, humanity. I don't even just mean like soldiers. I think it's awesome.
Okay, so before we get into the bioskin thing, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about the new J's List.
Yeah, no,
the
definitely.
second skin. They're creating an anthrax-proof second skin J's List. So anybody who's worn the J's List, my gosh, you know how incredibly horrible it is. The big charcoal suit, and a lot of us in 2003, if you went into Iraq, you went into Iraq wearing that fucking thing.
I can't even imagine. I can't. That's like a horror movie.
And it was horrible. So they're actually coming out with a new J's List, which is essentially a pair of underwear that you just slap on, and it has like these.
That's cozy.
Yeah, it has like these sensing particles in it that just basically attracts whatever chemical, whatever, just like, I guess, kind of just sucks it away from your body. So again, talking about this, I kind of feel the same way about this that I felt about the armor a while ago.
You want more than undies?
I mean, look, at least if somebody's shooting at me and I'm wearing this new armor, okay, I can hide behind something, I can figure things out, I can do whatever I need to. But we're talking about chemical warfare, and you're like, put on this fucking pair of underwear.
Move, soldier, move.
Like, dude. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think part of me feels like I'd like to have my big charcoal J's List suit. I don't know how comfortable I feel with just like a pair of undies.
That's so interesting. Just where technology is going is just so fascinating. I don't know. I mean, so like, I love sci-fi movies, right? Like I talk about often, and oh my God, this is like we're living in a sci-fi movie in the very near future.
Yeah, and so to talk a little bit about what seems incredibly sci-fi to me was, I think what you were talking about earlier was the 3D printing of
skin. Yes, that's ridiculous.
It looks really amazing, actually, because they're talking about using it to, of course, treat like severe burns, as well as just regular wounds. Replacing the skin. And there was two different ones, actually, that I saw. There was one that was talking about using like a synthetic skin. So essentially just like some kind of mixture skin substitute that they've grown or that they've created to sort of just replace the skin that may be missing or burned or whatever. And they just kind of graft it on. But then the other one was actually talking about a skin substitute that is actually grown from a patient's own cells
The cells is fascinating to me because, not to always go back to, to like sci-fi, but there was an episode of Star Trek where I think it was one of the movies. It doesn't matter, but where Bones was walking through a hospital and he looked at a guy on a gurney and he was like, "My God, what's wrong with him?" And he looked and it was kidney dialysis and he was like, "Oh, barbarians, take this pill, you'll be fine." And the next scene, he was fine, right? But the whole thing to me was funny because one day, right, somebody will be severely burned. And somebody will say, "Oh, it's okay. We can just regrow your skin with your own cells."
What's the matter with you?
Kidney dialysis.
Dialysis? My God, what is this, the Dark Ages? Here. You swallow that. And if you have any problems, just call me.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing that you had to bring up Star Trek. That's what's amazing.
Because I'm a huge Trekkie.
Oh my God.
I love Star Trek.
We've already talked about this.
Or the original, by the way. I'm a purist.
I believe that was actually the episode where they went back to get whales.
Yes, they did. They did. Anyway, love Star Trek. But the fact that we're at this point where we're going to be able to save people like this, I think is just amazing.
Yeah, so it actually says in the article that the skin autografts, of course, grafting skin has been around for quite some time already, but this is talking about how the technology is used for rapidly growing replacement skin to use in large scale, for somebody who's had 50% of their body burned, which is not uncommon today, overseas. A lot of these guys getting trapped in burning vehicles, things like that. So it's something they could do amazing things for soldiers who are coming back.
Yes, because aesthetically, your appearance is a huge, factor in your recovery, right? So, a lot of people who are burned, right, they go through a lot of pain emotionally as well as physically. So the fact that we're getting to a point one day where they won't have to go through that pain. It's mind blowing to me. I think it's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And what's even more exciting is that it's in the testing phase right now. So it's not just, this isn't so sci-fi that we're just, talking about something that's going to come in the future. I mean, they're testing it. They have 12 patients ready to do their phase 2 trials right now. So people are actually having this done, and it's of course going to change their lives, which is completely awesome. So it's really amazing, just looking back on everything we've talked about, how far we've come and how quickly we've gotten there.
It's amazing to me of what I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, I'm only going to be 45, and it's crazy.
I'm not going to lie. I've said it several times to people that it's amazing to me that I feel like I lived in the perfect time period, because growing up, during my childhood, it was all pre-internet, right? So, and then of course, I mean, don't get me wrong, we were doing amazing things in my childhood as well. But now, I mean, right after I became an adult, of course, things like the internet came along, and now things are advancing so quickly. If you follow anything to do with science, these guys discovering gravitational waves and all this change is just happening and happening and happening on a faster scale.
And we're hearing about it.
It's just
much
amazing.
Faster.
And what's crazy to me, what's awesome to me, is that the Army, surprisingly, is actually just jumping on board with this stuff, and they're really trying to advance things. And I don't know, it's incredible to see. It's incredible to watch the progress, and it's incredible to actually be in the Army and taking a part of it, So
yeah, so definitely feel free to let us know what you think about airborne being obsolete or not being obsolete, and just your thoughts about anything else. I mean, we bring topics that we hope are interesting to you, so let us know if we are doing a good job. And if you have anything to add to any of our conversations, definitely feel free.
Yeah, so thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Veterans Cafe podcast. If you have the opportunity, please do go over to iTunes and give us a review. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you're getting the next episode Wednesday morning. And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye!
Visit our website to join the conversation. That's vetscafe.com, vetscafe.com.